wanted to start off quickly with a question that I think intrigues everyone's like the most. How is it possible for two creatives to work together? So if I remember correctly, Claudia, you're coming with a background from fine arts, and Edward, you're coming with a background with the philosophy, right? So how did you guys meet? How does this collaboration happen?
I want to say how we met.
We met when I was living in a tree on a protest site in Wales. And Ed at that time was studying philosophy. I just finished my fine art degree, and was a bit disenchanted with the art world. And we started thinking about light on a sort of basic, for its basic principles, in the sense that Ed was coming at it from a philosophical approach, specifically related to esoteric philosophy. I was looking at it from deconstructing the photographic and cinematic apparatus. So you can sort of see behind me here the different apparatuses that we use. Yeah, and we found a kind of confluence in concepts that we were both fascinated in.
Yeah, I think in some ways we approach, at least initially, we kind of approach the subject from two different sides of things. And I think as that's developed now, it's just a very fluid, seamless way of working. We're often doing, quite large scale projects. So yeah, it takes the two of us to do it.
We also have two kids together, so we're sort of constantly balancing the work life situation.
That's so interesting and such an unconventional place to meet at. And can you walk me a little bit through the process? So how do you find the topic that you want to work on, like the inspiration? How does it happen for you?
When I was doing my fine art degree, I sort of felt like I wanted a bit of academic rigor, I guess, partly. And so I started looking at environmental anthropology. So I did a short course in environmental anthropology whilst I was doing my BA in fine art. And then a friend of mine actually was living on a protest site and invited me to go. And I felt like that kind of the protest in action, as in the kind of lived experience within nature in order to protect nature, was just really really inspiring for me. So yeah, I lived there for a while. We lived outside. We built our homes. We cooked by fire. All very magical. And then I went on to study a master's in environmental anthropology, so looking at how people interact with and perceive their environment. So our work very much kind of takes that as its kind of foundational principles, whereby we're thinking about how people are interacting with space and looking at the most potent aspects of our environment, light, the way that light affects the ambience of a space and how we move through it.
Yeah, I'd say also, it's about coming from experience. I think we're treating light as a metaphor for consciousness. I think we're when we're looking at a project or a concept, we're trying to just mine that very kind of fundamental sense in which we're treating experience or consciousness as the subject and trying to kind of tune light to affect a particular conscious state.
Wow, that's such a beautiful idea. I love that how you like to increase this like consciousness and then change, I guess, like how people interact in the space. And do you see it often, probably when you have an exhibition or after when you talk with the visitors, how people say get what the idea that you put in inside the installation?
What we try to encourage is a kind of meditative approach to the work. So some of the really nice ones we've had, for example, when we did a piece in a church up in Durham, where we suspended thousands of pieces of glass in this church, and yeah, people really came in and kind of were able to sit down because I had all the pews in the church and just spend really a long period of time experiencing the work. And a lot of the work is kind of designed to have it's built from sort of meditation techniques of gazing. So where you're looking into the work and it's designed to leave a kind of after image in your eyes. So you actually have the kind of optical effects that stay with you and carry on impacting your perceptual field after engaging with the work. So it's kind of yeah, it very much has this kind of meditative implication, I think.
Oh, and do you meditate yourself? Like either of you do have like this grounding practices that help you to go through your let's say like creative endeavors, like on daily basis, or perhaps before you like start up working.
Yeah, I meditate daily. I wouldn't say it's part of the creative process per se, but it's part of the life process.
I think it's
There's some
also thinking about
similarities.
meditation in a broader context as well. So not just meditation in terms of sort of, sitting cross-legged and tuning into your mind, but also tuning into that like a mental headspace when you're in different environments. So going on a walk in the woods and tuning into the light, even on a busy street, like being able to kind of perceive different aspects of our lived experience through a meditative approach. So we've actually done a few retreats, silent retreats, where you're encouraged to see cleaning as a meditation. You're encouraged to see these kind of daily practices that we normally sort of just take for granted and do quite quickly, and don't really think about, but actually just try and make space for what you're doing instead of just, going about it and not really thinking about it.
So you did it together. You said the meditative prep and like the cleaning practices.
We've been on silent retreats together. We've also done them individually. Yeah, silent retreats, Vipassana retreats are incredibly potent experiences. We both came out really like buzzing and very kind of inspired. Because it's like a mental cleanse, and it's also like a self-therapy. There's an ability to kind of take on a self-reflection that you can't have in a kind of everyday waking life, especially when you have children and bills and all sorts of life admin that you have to do. Yeah, to kind of extract yourself from that and be able to really focus is incredibly amazing.
Wow, it's such a mystery to me still, to be honest. So you worked together for over like 10 years, I think, if I remember right, correctly. And you both like, have obviously it's so hard for each of us sometimes to embrace our own journeys, but not only you embrace each of, each other's, you cooperate together. So when you start to work on the project, I'm sure you have some like maybe not conflicts, but like this like creative flows. How do you go through this? Or do you just like literally think along so well that it's just like there are no issues happening?
I think it's just it's a dialogue. So it's a process of kind of talking, but literally with an idea, kind of passing it backwards and forwards. And
There's
also,
always an answer though. Like we'll always have a disagreement, but then somehow we'll always agree on the answer eventually, because the answer is somewhere in between that dialogue.
yeah. I think we tend to always find a common ground where there's always some tensions, and it resolves in the piece. And I think it's part of it's a kind of sculptural process, I think, of just kind of working with the different viewpoints and the different approaches to the concept or whatever it might be, and then seeing how that resolves.
I love the idea of the dialogue. And if we like move a little bit like further and think about the long-term vision or sort of like mission, if you'd like, for your work or something, what would you ideally want it to be like in many, many years?
So a certain sort of series of body of work is our major outdoor pieces, and we consider these as sort of future relics. We're very much influenced by stone circles and the idea of the passage of time and circadian rhythms and seasonality and cosmological alignments, firstly being kind of foundational principles for those pieces, but also impacting them over time. So as a kind of long-term ambition, we're looking to cite these pieces almost like glass circles as monuments that exist globally.
Wow, I love it. That's I feel like I'm growing like while talking with you because it's also so profound. All of your pieces that just they leave you thinking, especially like this role of light that you had mentioned earlier. And I was also curious. So when you feel like stuck, or like I mean, I guess we all do like once in a while. Like, what are your like? What do you do? Do you go on nature? Do you go on the galleries to get inspired by other artists? Do you just like meditate? Or like, yeah, what are your practices for those moments?
It's an interesting one. I think that there's always we always have quite a lot to do. So I mean, yeah, you get sort of I assume you're talking about kind of mental blocks in the creative process, which is I mean, for me, I find these the creative process is a long game. It's things that it's often processes that pan out over the course of many years, and you're kind of just always chipping away at it. I think a lot of the time these processes also have their own kind of journeys, their own evolutions, that's kind of just happening, and you kind of are just helping it along a lot of the time. So I think yeah, sometimes you don't have to do very much to just nurture things to be in their own time and kind of have trust in the process.
It's more about nurturing our sort of individual mental states, I think, is more important to the creative process in a sense.
Yeah, you can get in your own way.
Yeah, exactly. And actually the ideas are already there. They just need to be found.
I love how I already can see this dialogue that I'm sure like happening, you know, through your creative process, how you like literally enriching each other. And how about when you were like starting your artistic journeys right before you met, right? Like, so now art is obviously like a huge part of your life, but how did you come to this realization? So I got that you know, the Claudia, you were like getting the fine arts degree, so clearly you're knowing you're in the path of the artist. And Ed, like, where is it also art in your life, or it's just appeared to be after you met with Claudia and then the
well, actually, before I was practicing it's kind of visual arts, I was uh, working as a musician and always writing. But my main kind of yeah, academic work was in philosophy, and I think I was always kind of approaching this kind of area of philosophy that I was working in as having a kind of limit state of being able to articulate in language where the thought gets to, or where the ideation gets to. And I was trying to sort of write about this limit, and it kind of naturally leads you towards an understanding of praxis or poetics. And yeah, for me, it was kind of very natural to kind of to realize that the philosophy kind of naturally spilt into a practice as its kind of expression. So I see my kind of work in art as just a pure extension of philosophy for that reason.
Claudia, and for you, the art was in your life since like, I don't know, like the childhood, or it was like appeared to be like later?
Yeah, I could never foresee doing anything else. I don't know, my all my family are in the film industry.
Oh,
And so for me, like that was my background. That was what everybody in my family did and does. And I suppose I sort of saw this way of deconstructing it. And that was what became of interest to me, was this idea of like what's happening in between the technology that we can explore and we can understand. So I started off doing photography. And then I went into the darkroom. I was just really like enthralled by the experience of being in the darkroom, and so I sort of wanted to reconstruct that outside of it. So yeah, I guess it was very much just a kind of feeling and intuition that's just what I had to do, and it was just finding a way of exploring it that spoke to me.
it both sounds like it was calling for, for both of you, which is incredible. I think that's the only way that like, they can, you know, end up creating such a beautiful things. And well, could you talk a little bit more about the projects that excite you now, like something you look forward to and I cannot wait to share with the world, or perhaps already sharing?
Yeah, we're working on a few projects at the moment, which are really exciting. Sort of some of the largest light installations we've done, and also some external pieces. There's something we can't talk about too much right now, but I think for us, it's just reaching out more of that kind of like ability to cite permanent pieces in the public realm. But also have these sort of quieter moments that are a bit more personal. So creating works that kind of have a kind of individual interaction with audiences as well.
Interesting. And for your works, like let's say in many, many years, ideally, do you see them in the public spaces, in the museums and art foundations, so say like all over the place?
Yeah, very much. We made a piece last year for a museum in Miami, and it was really exciting to do a work that we were able to be quite site specific with, in the sense that there's a sort of feed that comes from the sky that feeds through the piece into a kind of video loop. So it has this kind of like very visceral interaction with the audience and with the environment surrounding it. And I think really for us, it's about having those opportunities where we can explore the surrounding environment and make works that are able to be very site responsive in that sense.
Yeah, and I'd say also kind of long form sort of durational. So obviously the pieces that are in the public realm or in the outdoor settings, they're constantly responding to, you know, the changing in the sort of the light of the space. But even in sort of a museum context, with this example and others, we're interested in how the piece kind of evolves as an interaction with the space.
And you mentioned the environments earlier. So other environments now you're thinking about, you have not had chance to work with yet, but really looking forward. Could be somewhere out of nature or some sites, or it's just like, you know, again, like happens naturally if you run into them and you're like, okay, well, would love to see our piece out there.
Yeah, well, we've been really lucky to do a lot of work in deserts. We've done quite a few pieces that have been sited in the desert in a few different places across the world, and deserts are extraordinary landscapes because they're so vast. You know, the expanse of them is really it's totally breathtaking, and the kind of scale is very humbling. But I think we've always talked about sort of mountainous spaces, you know, this kind of idea of being able to respond to the kind of peaks and the kind of immediate weather movements as well around mountain ranges would be really interesting.
And can you walk me a little bit, just because I'm so curious, through your typical, if there is one, day in the studio? Like, do you work together, separately? Like, do you start early on, or whatever the inspiration comes? How does that happen?
Well, we have children, so our routine is very much based around them. So after we've sort of managed that aspect, we tend to get the admin out of the way first. That's because, you know, there is a lot of administration with the work that we do. We're working with engineers and architects and project managers. You know, there's a lot of logistical aspects that are very important for us to get right and so that the work is how it should be. So often there's a fair bit of that. And then we'll sort of move on to the more creative aspects once we've kind of, you know, exercised the more pragmatic stuff. And it could be anything from playing around with some glass forms to doing compositions. You can see in the back here that we sort of, well, actually you can see quite a few there. Different compositions that we play with in the studio. This grid is set up so that we can very much move pieces around. And when the commissions are larger that we're working on, then we'll use an external studio, but we very much use this space to sort of do the compositions of the works.
But I think I didn't realize till like right now when you mentioned, so not only your professional lives are like tightly connected, also like your personal lives, right? Like because you work and you know have lives together. So how do you balance? I think Claudia, you mentioned earlier too. I mean, I guess it's a challenge for everyone, not only for the creatives, to balance work, life, all of it. Like how does it come together for you? And other moments when you're just like, okay, whatever, we should just, I don't know, try to do our own thing without, you know, trying to make it work together. It's never happens.
Oh, I think the fact that we're doing it together makes it easier.
Oh, okay.
For sure. I think, well, I don't know how I could be a mother and an artist at the same time if I wasn't doing it in a partnership. I think, well, you can, obviously it's possible, people do it, but but it's very hard to commit. It's very hard to, because I don't want to be an absent mother as well. You know, I want to be present and I want to be with the children that we've made together as well. So, you know, it's really important to try and find that balance. And I think the fact that we do the work together and the parenting together really helps that. It helps a flow, a kind of, yeah, it helps a kind of balance of both. But it's really hard as well. It's definitely very challenging.
Yeah, it's very hard because you have to have separation between work and life, but also you want it's necessary for the two to be fluid as well. So it's just a big challenge. Difficult.
Yeah. I mean, I was reading recently about this idea of the home and what the home means to artists. And, you know, for us, this is our studio. We have a studio in our house. So, you know, our home is connected to our studio is connected to our home, and that kind of flow, the interaction of family life and work life is very much intertwined. And I think that makes the work possible, both on a conceptual and a practical level.
Wow, that's so nice. And I guess it's a little bit the question, but do you have this, say, like perhaps like it's the same one for you or a different, the big dream or something like, you know, you're really, really excited about and looking forward in many, many years, either for your personal lives or for work?
I mean, I think that I would just like to see, like to, have the opportunity to continue evolving the work that we're doing. I think that, if we're, in the next 20, 30 years, what this practice will evolve into, I think is very exciting. And I'm just happy to be on it.
I think actually, so our practice is about our interaction with technology and the impact that technology has on our consciousness. And particularly with having kids, and particularly with thinking about interactions with technology on a kind of on the level of immature brains, so if you look at the impact that it has on kids, I'm really hoping that our work will start to have kind of a more like tangible interaction with the way that people interact with technology, that they can start, the work can start to open up an understanding of how it's influencing us and our children.